What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the issues that I've found with Warzone Pacific so far. Obviously, there's a lot of things I love about it too, so we'll talk some about those. I don't want this to be purely negative, but I want to talk about a lot of the things I'm concerned with, some of the frustrations I've had with some decisions that have been made, and things like that. Obviously, this is not an attack on the developers, and I think I want to specifically mention that because I feel like nowadays all I see on Twitter and stuff is people just like echo chambering these thoughts about how bad certain games are and how poorly things have been done, and it has to be extremely difficult to be on a development team and work on these games that are extremely complex and hard to develop. And just anytime you go on social media, you just see people ripping that game for things. And there are tons of great things about Warzone Pacific. Obviously, I love Warzone at its core. I've dedicated literally my entire life. I can't overstate that. Like literally since March, the game released 2020, almost every day of my life has been dedicated to this game. That's how much I like it. So this is coming from a place of love, and I just want the game to be as good as it possibly can. So I want to highlight the things that I think could make it better. Whether or not it'll make any difference, I don't know, but I just want to talk about the things that I care about. Again, if you're a developer, not against you at all. I know there's tons of developers pouring their hearts and souls into this game. It's not always your decision, and it's just difficult to make these things. So let's get into it, and we will talk about all the things that I have found with Warzone Pacific that I have not been enjoying, or bugs, or issues, or anything. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is how long it takes to level guns. It's pretty obnoxious. I think there's like 70 levels per gun. I have about 19, 20 hours played on my new account, and I think the highest level gun I have is like 45, and the next highest level is like 35. And then after that, I don't really have anything leveled. I've only played with a few guns, and the leveling is just painfully slow. And this is from someone who plays all the time. And obviously, there should be some level of grind to level up the guns. It shouldn't just be, oh, you get everything right away, because then there's no reward. Like there has to be a difficulty there, or it's not going to be rewarding to get that. But this is just too much. It just takes way too long to level these guns up for a normal person that works a 9 to 5 job, or someone that has kids or something. Like you're not gonna be able to play more than, if you're lucky, maybe an hour or two a night, and that's maybe stretching it for a lot of people. And you're just gonna have nothing leveled. Like literally, you're gonna have nothing leveled. You're not gonna be able to compete with the people that have these guns all leveled, because there's so many good attachments later on in the weapons, and it's just gonna be really frustrating. So I'd just like to see this toned back a little bit. Maybe cut the time in half, basically like double XP all the time, or something along those lines, because it's honestly too much. And like I said, there has to be some level of grind, or there's no reward to it, but it's just too much right now. So this video is coming about because I kind of went on a Twitter rant last night about the things that I was frustrated with in the game. So I'm going to go through those tweets first and just talk about each point. So the first thing I talk about is the automaton being the most boring gun I've ever used, and that's just basically all I have to say about that. It has no recoil. You just hold it down on the target. Extremely easy to use. And if you're trying to snipe against that, it's literally impossible because they never miss. So any sort of flinch at all, you just get flinched over and over and over. It just feels terrible to get shot by the automaton because the person just does not miss. It doesn't hit hard, doesn't kill very fast, but it's just one of those guns that doesn't miss, and it's just so boring. Like I have no desire to use the gun, but I feel like right now I'm punished if I use anything else, just because the automaton's what I have leveled, and it's so accurate that it works really well as a long-range gun. So that's very frustrating. The other thing I mentioned here is the bombing barrage. So in Vanguard Royale right now, which is what I think most people are enjoying playing the most just because it's new and fresh, there's this bombing run nonstop. The entire game, every single game, makes it so you can't hear anything. The bombs going off in the distance sound just like footsteps on wood. So it's like you literally, if you're in a building that has wood floors, you don't know where anyone is ever, because the bombs in the distance sound just like footsteps. And on top of that, when the actual bombing runs happen and the bomb comes down on you, if you haven't played, bombs will actually drop on you. It looks like a cluster strike. It doesn't do any damage, but it's a stun, and it targets players specifically. So it's like, if you're playing for positioning and you're trying to be sneaky and play kind of how you have to play for BRs to win, your position gets given away because a bomb comes down on top of you, which is silly in the first place. Your position shouldn't be given away in a BR. And secondly, it stuns you. Like, who wants environmental stuns? Everyone hates being stunned. So I just don't know who thought it was a good idea to drop stuns from the sky on players randomly, and just this RNG infuriating mechanic that can lose you fights over and over. It just happens every single game, on top of not being able to hear anything. Very frustrating. I don't understand those decisions. Next up, I talk about the fire sale. So every single game in Vanguard Royale, there's a fire sale. And because you can't buy a loadout for the first entire zone, like the first zone, and then once the first zone closes, you can buy a loadout. People, if you're on a decent squad, you're going to have, I don't know, I've had up to like $100,000 in my squad at the time of the fire sale happens, which is obnoxious because you get free self-res, and then what else are you going to spend money on? So you just pop UAVs. And if you didn't know, UAVs stack to some degree. They don't fully stack. So if you pop 50 UAVs, that's going to last like 3 or 4 minutes. You're going to have an advanced UAV for 3 or 4 minutes. So it's like the entire map has self-res, which is a frustrating mechanic in itself because you down someone and then they just self-res if they're behind cover. That can lose you fights all the time. You have to assume literally every person you're playing against has self-res. Very frustrating. I was already kind of like that before because it was only 4,000, so most people had self-res before, but now literally everyone has self-res because there's a fire sale every single game. And then everyone also has advanced UAVs for like 4 or 5 minutes at a time because they're so cheap at the fire sale. You can just pop 50 of them and you'll have a UAV forever, basically. It's just really frustrating. I don't know why they thought a fire sale every game was a good idea. On top of that, if your team wipes, you can just buy your whole team back at a fire sale, and it just kind of takes away the punishment of getting wiped early if someone's still alive. So that's pretty frustrating. And then coming from someone who is a sniper, I use the Swiss a lot. That was probably my best gun in the other game the other map. It's been really frustrating seeing these nerfs, especially in Vanguard Royale. There's just no sniper that you can play aggressive with whatsoever. I made the Type 99 video yesterday that one shots to the chest. Obviously, that is pretty OP, but it's balanced out by things that are terrible about the snipers from Vanguard. So there's horrible aimed walking sway. The gun just sways everywhere. I'll show a clip of that actually while I'm talking about this right now. I'll go back in and cut it in later with the video editing software. But the aimed walking sway is terrible on the Cold War guns. The flinch is atrocious. The flinch is the worst, tied for the worst of any gun we've ever had for every single one of the Vanguard snipers, except the Kar 98. The Kar 98 matches the Modern Warfare Kar 98 and the Swiss after the nerf. So that's still a lot of flinch, and it's still really hard to use that gun aggressively. Definitely the best option of all of the Vanguard snipers. But anyway, I digress. The issue is the only way to use a sniper right now is to sit on a hill 400 meters away and try to snipe someone, which there's going to be people who are like, yeah, that's how snipers are meant to be used. Okay, well, that's true, but this is a video game. This isn't real life. This is trying to balance the weapons in a fun way for everyone to play, and the snipers are literally almost unusable in a fun sense right now. It's just, you just sit back and snipe from 800 meters away, and it's not good, in my opinion. I'm very frustrated that I can't even use a sniper to play aggressive at all, or it's just like throwing for my team. I have to just use the no-brain automaton and just beam people with no recoil. And I said, I said in this tweet, if you claim the automaton is more skillful than playing aggressive with the Swiss was before the nerf, I will fight you. And I stand by that. There's no chance. All these people that complained about the Swiss having no flinch and the Modern Warfare car having no flinch, yes, if you use the flinch perk on the Modern Warfare car, it's bugged. It has actually no flinch. But you try to tell me that the number of people that can drop a 20 bomb with the automaton is even remotely close to the number of skilled people that can use a Swiss and have good games with a Swiss, even with the low flinch it had before, no chance. It is not easy to use the Swiss and get headshots on people while you're getting beamed. People think it's easy because it happens every now and then. It was not easy. I do agree that they needed some nerf, but the nerf that they got was pretty aggressive. I think all snipers should be slightly less flinched than what the Swiss and the car have right now. Just a little bit less. Not where they were before, but less than they are now, because it's really difficult to use all of them right now, and it just takes away a lot of the fun from a lot of the people that played the game and used snipers before. As far as the loadout change goes, where you can't buy the loadout until the end of the first circle, I obviously love loadouts. That's why I built True Game It, because I love tweaking with loadouts and playing with stuff and trying to find good loadies. It does have some positives in that no one's ghosted, so if you have enough money to buy UAVs and pop those, you can do that. And you'll be able to see everyone without popping an advanced UAV with 3 UAVs. So there are some positives. Overall, I don't like it. It kind of messes up the pacing of the game, it feels like to me. I gave it a chance. I wanted to like it, and I wanted it to be okay. But I've kind of just decided, nah, I just don't really like it. I'd like my loadouts back. I'd like to be able to scramble for the loadout and then get it, and then go push teams and actually have my guns. It feels like half the match is over before you can even get the loadout guns that you've spent a million years trying to level. So that's kind of frustrating to me. But overall, I don't. It's not a huge deal to me, especially if they made the floor loot a little bit better. The floor loot's pretty bad. So if the floor loot was better, I think people would have less of a problem with this. But right now, the floor loot's pretty terrible. So maybe they'll update that in the future, or maybe we'll get loadouts back. I'm not sure. A couple other small annoyances: the vehicles, the Vanguard vehicles. It feels like you're driving on the moon or something. Like super low gravity. They only go fast if you're not turning at all. So they just feel terrible to drive and really hard to control compared to the Modern Warfare vehicles. So I mean, easy fix there. Just literally make the mechanics feel the same as the Modern Warfare vehicles, because the Modern Warfare vehicles feel fine. I don't know why they made a change to something that was so basic. Maybe they were trying to make it feel like they were slower, like they were, from 1944 or whatever. But again, it's a game. Like, just make the game feel good. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do things like that to try to make it feel realistic. In general, audio in the game's kind of wonky as well. It seems like, for first of all, airstrikes are obnoxiously loud and you can't hear anything for, the 10-15 seconds that the airstrike's happening, which is really annoying. You can't even hear your team because it's so loud. So just turn that down, make that not so loud. Footstep audio, a lot of people have been complaining about footstep audio. For me, I haven't really had too many issues with that. It's never been great. I mean, we can all agree that it's never been great, but it just feels the same to me. It doesn't feel worse than it did before. It just feels pretty much the same, which is still not great. But I haven't had huge issues with that. The gulag, I don't like the gulag at all. A lot of that's for just personal preference reasons. This is my my least favorite gulag I've ever had, and I feel like that's because there's no, in every other gulag they were bigger. There was more situation to like outplay the person with your brain rather than just your gun skill. And I feel like in this gulag it's so small. It's basically just 50-50, which is what a lot of people want. So I get that. A lot of people do want this kind of gulag, but for me, I liked having dynamic gulags where I felt like I could use my brain to outsmart the person and do something that would be unexpected or something like that, rather than just simply having a 1v1 gunfight and whoever sees the other person first wins. Like, that is just frustrating to me. I would like to be able to outplay the person with actual, gameplay decisions rather than just simply getting lucky, seeing the person first, and being better at shooting. But that's just personal preference. But the audio in the gulag is very frustrating. You can hear the people above running around, but you can't really hear the people that are in the gulag with you. I mean, literally, I think I've heard footsteps maybe twice in the gulag, and that was because the person sprinted at me. Literally, it was just a bot player, and he just sprinted at me, and I could hear exactly where he was, and I pre-fired him. But overall, the audio in the gulag is really rough. All right, so here's a quick example of this flinch and how bad it is on the Vanguard guns, as well as most of the other guns now. So this is a 3-line rifle. I'm trying to shoot this guy. He's probably like 150 meters away, and he's just flinching me so bad I can't take the shot. I can't get a shot off, even though I'm behind cover and I'm like 150 meters away, which is where a sniper rifle should have a huge advantage. So I miss once. I get one shot off, and then he knows exactly where I am, and he just tap fires his gun and makes it so I literally can't get back on target because the flinch is so obnoxious. That's too much flinch. Like, that's not how it should be. You should have some chance, especially at that distance. One of the things I've heard brought up a lot is maybe increase the flinch the closer you get to the target. I think that's an interesting idea. So if you're 20 meters from someone, give them flinch like that. But if you're 50 meters, maybe half that. If you're 100 meters, half that again, to make snipers more and more effective at range while still being, somewhat usable in the mid range. Because right now it's just too much, and that's basically what all the Vanguard snipers look like when you try to use them, and none of the flinch resistance attachments actually work on them. So it's just a really frustrating place to be for snipers right now. I'm just gonna have some gameplay in the background running while I talk, just so it's not just me talking on Twitter. But some other issues, obviously dev errors and crashes. A lot of people are having a lot of these right now. Hopefully these will just be resolved with time. Again, it's just not super easy to program and test for every scenario, every piece of hardware out there. But it also is happening a ton on consoles, and I will talk a little bit about consoles specifically. I know there's a lot of issues with console right now. So we'll go through some of those. Even though I don't play on console, I'd like to at least talk about them some. But yeah, the dev errors are crazy. Thankfully, mostly they're happening in pregame lobby, so it's not like the middle of the match. They do happen sometimes in the middle of the match, but I would say 90% of my squad's dev errors and crashes have been in the pregame lobby. So that's a nice thing about them, is that they're not happening in the middle of the game and in important moments very often. All right, so for this video, I wanted to go in and show why maybe FOV slider on consoles was not a thing. I assumed it was because the performance hit would be too big to render more. So the higher your FOV is, the more stuff is on the screen, obviously. So the more stuff would need to be rendered. and I was assuming that they already were having troubles hitting their FPS targets on consoles because consoles don't have the hardware that PCs can have. So that was just kind of my thought. I thought that's probably the reason they don't do it, but I wasn't sure. So I wanted to go in and show the performance differences. But huge surprise, I actually found that when you put FOV on 80, you get slightly less FPS. I don't know why. This guy just killed me, so I'm gonna have to go somewhere else to test. But I'll land in here and show you that. So I've got my PC set up on 4K right now, just to crank up and get closer to console FPS. I have basically the fastest PC that money can buy for Warzone right now. Could have slightly faster RAM, but that's about it. So I'll just stand on this cliff here and look out towards the ocean. So I'm getting 143, 142, 139, 144. So 139 to 144 FPS, generally sitting around 142 average. So if I open this, I don't move the direction I'm looking at all, and I pop this down to 80 FOV. My FPS is now 130, 127, 126, 125, 131. So about 10 FPS less. So I think what this might be is that because you're more zoomed in when you have lower FOV, it might be rendering the stuff in the frame at higher quality, which means it's taking even more performance. And this is just a PC comparison, so there's a chance the Xbox and PlayStation game works slightly differently, and this wouldn't be the case. So there is a chance that my original hypothesis would be true for consoles, where if they up the FOV, it would hurt performance. This is just a PC example, but this just makes me like super confused as to why there's no FOV slider on console. If it actually does hurt your performance to go to lower FOV, makes no sense at all that console players shouldn't have an FOV slider. I want to highlight some more specific console issues. So these are going to be some tweets. I tweeted out earlier asking for console players to let me know the issues they were having. So apparently the textures are an absolute mess on console. Sometimes they just don't load in. Sometimes they just look awful. And again, some of this could be performance related. They're trying to release this on, 8, 9-year-old hardware at this point for the old consoles. So it will be tough if you're on the older consoles, but on the newer consoles, not so much of an excuse. But yeah, here's an example. Just these trees obviously are not even like rendered whatsoever. They're just blobs. I've seen a bunch of different things like this. The gun glitch for the textures is back, so sometimes the guns look all, I don't even know how to describe it, polygony maybe, like they just blow up in polygons. And this is something that we had a long time ago on PC that they finally resolved, but now it's back for console, unfortunately. And it's not just guns, sometimes it happens to players. So if you look at this one, here's a ADS view of that same glitch happening. Just, you obviously can't see anything. This is the same problem we used to have with these weird textures. Here's the same problem again with somebody else, but this time he's having it on all kinds of items and players and things. So obviously this is a pretty unplayable issue. I don't even know how he's killing people with this. But there's a lot of things with console right now. It's just basically unplayable for a lot of people, unfortunately. And I think they'll fix these things, but I know how frustrating it has to be to not be able to play right now, especially if you put in all the time to level guns and you were really excited about it. This guy says he loses HUD and it looks like his game's running at about 3 FPS in the gulag after he dies. I lose my HUD a lot on the PC actually as well, and sometimes when I parachute in, it seems like 160 FOV and like everything's zoomed out and it's just weird. There's some weird glitches that come back when you die. But overall, those aren't game breaking. As soon as you pick up a weapon, it fixes it for me. I don't know if that's the case for this guy or not, but overall, there's lots of bugginess and issues with this game. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't want to, blame the developers because I know how hard it would be to make a game like this and test everything. But consoles, I feel like specifically, they have the same hardware, so you should be able to test it on the same hardware and find these issues ahead of time. But it just didn't happen, I guess. And these bugs, I'm sure, will be fixed with time, especially since we had this game roughly working on the same engine beforehand. Okay for Warzone on Verdansk. I think I hit pretty much all the topics I wanted to cover. I'm sure I missed a bunch of small things. Weapon balancing is always going to be tough with this many guns and this many attachments, so that I don't blame them for at all. That'll take some time. It can be frustrating right now, and I know they're trying to figure out how to balance snipers with flinch and ADS walking sway and ADS times and things like that. So I'm not like too annoyed by that stuff because I know how difficult that would be, especially someone like me who's as into the stats as I am. It would be a nightmare to try to balance all this stuff. So they're doing their best, I'm sure. And this isn't an attack on the developers again. I want to reiterate that. I'm sure there's so many people at the company that are extremely passionate and also want this game to be as good as possible. There's multiple things that play into that not always being the case when it comes out. Some of the time, the things that I want as a diehard fan might not be the things that someone who gets to play 1 or 2 hours a week once. So there's all kinds of different things. Companies exist to make money, so the decisions they make generally are going to, make them make the most money. So that's just kind of the things you have to keep in mind. Unfortunately, that's the case. I wish it was like, yeah, every game's designed specifically for me and it has everything that I want in it and it's done exactly how I want it, but that's never going to be the case. So I think I'm loving the map. I think the map's amazing. I can't wait for all these bugs to get fixed and hopefully the bombing runs to be removed and the environmental stuns to be removed because those are just crazy to me. I hope leveling gets sped up a little bit because it is absolutely painful right now to try to level guns up. And again, that could have been done as a business decision. Who knows? Maybe they're trying to get people to buy packs. Maybe they're trying to get people to buy Vanguard because you can level a little bit faster in Vanguard. I don't know. And those are the things that, unfortunately, we don't have control over. And they're never going to change if they think what they're doing is better for the game and making them more money. They're going to do those things. It's just how it is. And that's unfortunate, but it's true. So I'm trying to enjoy Vanguard and Warzone for what they are. I think the map, like I said, is incredible. And once we get these weapons balanced out a little bit better, and once I get some more of the guns leveled up, I think I'm going to have a much, much better time. I think the snipers need to be tweaked a little bit. They're virtually unusable right now in Vanguard Royale. But yeah, those are my general thoughts on the game and the things I think could be fixed. Obviously, I also have a lot of good things to say. I could make a video about that as well. But I just wanted to make a video highlighting all these things. So, I get told all the time that I'm like staying silent on the issues that are plaguing the community. And like, no, I talk about things all the time that are negative about the game. I'm not paid by Activision or Raven in any way whatsoever. I just make content, and I was genuinely enjoying Warzone Pacific for the first few days. I had a blast on the new map, and I was having a ton of fun with the new guns. But then they brought in this bombing run, and everybody else had guns leveled up because I haven't had a chance to play very much because I've been working on the site and content and things like that. And now all of a sudden, everyone has a gun that's pretty good, and I don't. And I'm getting destroyed by these people that have leveled up automatons, and it's just been a lot of things stacking up that have made it go from super fun in the first like 2 days to super frustrating in the last couple days. And hopefully these things get resolved as time goes on. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll stop rambling. This was mostly just a Anthony talking head video, but I hope you enjoyed it and found it somewhat insightful, and I'll see you guys on the next video.